Before the world reaches for you, before your phone lights up, before you step into your roles, there is a moment that belongs entirely to you. It's the quiet breath before the noise, the pause before the day begins. That moment is where your truth lives. And yet, most of us rush past it. We run toward what others need, what others expect, what others want from us, forgetting that we can't pour from a cup that's already empty. So today, I want to invite you to do something different. Before you start your day, whisper these truths to yourself, not as affirmations to perform, but as reminders to return. Because sometimes the most powerful words you can hear are the ones you say to yourself. I am still becoming. Such a simple sentence, and yet it carries a quiet revolution within it. Because when you whisper these words to yourself, you're not just affirming growth. You're releasing the illusion of arrival. You're giving yourself permission to live in the in between, to be unfinished, to unfold at your own pace. We spend so much of our lives chasing the version of ourselves that feels final, the one who has it all together, who knows all the answers, who has finally earned rest. But that version doesn't exist. And perhaps she's not meant to. Because every time you reach what you once thought was your destination, life invites you to grow again. Through love, through loss, through the unexpected turns that shape your heart more deeply than any plan ever could. To say, I am still becoming, is to admit that you are not static. You are fluid. You are changing. You are responding to the seasons of your life, the people who enter, the ones who leave, the dreams that evolve, the truths that shift. It means you can look at yourself today and know that you are not defined by the mistakes of your past or the uncertainty of your future. You are defined by the courage to continue showing up as you are, even when you don't have all the answers. There is a certain grace that comes with accepting your becoming. It's the moment you stop measuring your worth by milestones and start honoring your journey by presence. You begin to understand that growth isn't loud. It's not always visible or easy to explain. Sometimes it's the small, quiet decisions, the moments you choose kindness over pride, patience over impulse, self-trust over fear. These moments don't make headlines, but they are the architecture of transformation. Becoming is not about striving, it's about surrendering. It's about learning to be curious instead of critical, patient instead of perfect. When you whisper, I am still becoming, you loosen the grip of comparison, that constant, silent pressure to measure your timeline against someone else's. You begin to notice how each person is walking through a season of their own, some blooming, some resting, some rebuilding from what they thought they'd never survive. And so you begin to soften. You start to meet yourself with the same tenderness you reserve for others. You understand that there's no shame in progress that is unseen, in healing that takes time, in growth that doesn't look the way you imagined. You understand that every version of you, the unsure one, the hopeful one, the one still figuring it out, is sacred, because each is part of the same becoming. So when you wake tomorrow and your mind rushes to what needs fixing or finishing, pause. Whisper it gently like a promise in a prayer, I am still becoming. Not behind, not broken, just beautifully unfinished. And that is more than enough. My worth is not up for negotiation. When you whisper those words to yourself, something inside you settles. It's as if the constant hum of self-doubt quiets for a moment, and you can finally hear your own truth again. Because so much of our life is spent proving we're enough, proving we're lovable, proving we deserve to take up space. We learn it early. Approval becomes the currency of belonging. And slowly, almost imperceptibly, we start to measure our worth through the eyes of others. Their praise, their acceptance, their silence. But what happens when that validation doesn't come? When the people you've been trying to please stop clapping, or worse, when they walk away? Too often, We confuse someone's inability to see our value with a lack of value itself. We hand over the authority of our self-worth like it's negotiable, as if it can be revoked based on someone's perception. Whispering this truth, my worth is not up for negotiation, is how you take it back. It's how you remember that you are not a product to be appraised, but a person to be experienced. It's tempting to build your sense of self on achievement, on being needed, on being chosen. But that kind of worth is fragile. It collapses the moment the applause fades. True worth doesn't waver with circumstance. It's not earned, it's remembered. It's that quiet knowing that you matter, even when no one notices. That you have value, even when you're not producing, performing, or pleasing. The danger of forgetting this is subtle. It shows up in the way you overextend yourself just to keep peace, the way you stay silent to avoid rejection, the way you accept less than you deserve because you're afraid to be alone. Every time you abandon yourself for approval, you send a message to your own soul that love must be earned. And that is a wound that deepens with time. But there comes a moment, and it often arrives quietly, when you realize that no one can truly give you the worth you keep chasing. They can affirm it, reflect it, even celebrate it, but they cannot define it, because the essence of who you are isn't up for debate. It doesn't shrink because someone fails to see it. It doesn't disappear because you made mistakes. It doesn't depend on being understood. It simply is. So you begin to choose differently. You start saying no to what drains you, even if it disappoints others. You speak your truth, even if your voice trembles. You stop auditioning for a role in someone else's life and start inhabiting your own. And slowly, you realize that the people who truly see you don't need convincing. They recognize your light because they have met their own. When you whisper, "My worth is not up for negotiation," you remind yourself that your value was never meant to be bartered. It was meant to be embodied. I can hold joy and pain in the same breath. There's something profoundly human about that truth. We're taught to divide our emotions into neat categories. Good or bad, light or dark, right or wrong. But life doesn't move in straight lines. It dances in contrasts. There are mornings when you wake up with gratitude in your chest and grief sitting quietly beside it. There are days when laughter slips out even as your heart aches, and both are real. Both belong. We've been conditioned to believe that happiness is the absence of pain, that to be joyful, we must erase what hurts. But joy isn't the denial of pain. It's the ability to hold it without losing yourself. To whisper this truth to yourself is to grant permission to feel fully, without judgment or hierarchy. It's to recognize that the heart is spacious enough for everything. The love you lost, the love you're learning, the gratitude that keeps you grounded. Sometimes we fear that if we let pain in, it will consume us. So we build walls, thinking they will protect us. But walls don't only keep pain out, they also keep joy from coming in. You can't selectively numb emotion. When you shut down one feeling, you silence them all. The truth is, the people who feel deeply, who allow themselves to sit with discomfort, also experience the most vivid forms of joy, because their hearts are alive, awake, receptive. To hold joy and pain together is to live in emotional maturity. It's to know that you can miss someone and still be grateful for what was. That you can mourn the past and still be excited for what's ahead. That healing doesn't mean forgetting. It means expanding. Expanding your heart's capacity to hold both sorrow and sweetness without collapsing under the weight of either. There's a quiet strength in being able to say, I can hold both. It's not weakness to cry while you're grateful. It's not contradiction to feel love after loss. It's simply being human. And when you allow yourself to experience that duality, you stop fighting your emotions and start flowing with them. You realize that joy and pain are not opposites. They are companions. One gives meaning to the other. Without loss, love wouldn't carry depth. Without pain, joy wouldn't feel like relief. So the next time your heart feels conflicted, when you catch yourself thinking, how can I feel joy when I'm still hurting? Remember this truth. You are not broken for feeling both. You are beautifully alive. To be human is to hold multitudes, the ache of what's gone and the grace of what remains. Whisper it softly as a reminder of your wholeness. Fast, I can hold joy and pain in the same breath. I am responsible for the energy I bring. When you whisper these words to yourself, you step into the quiet power of self-awareness. Because so often we move through life reacting to the moods of others, to the pace of our days, to the noise that surrounds us. We forget that energy is contagious, that the atmosphere in a room can shift with the presence of just one grounded person. Every word, every glance, every silence carries an energy, and we are constantly transmitting it, whether we realize it or not. This truth isn't about blame, it's about ownership. It's about remembering that while you can't control what life gives you, you can always choose how you meet it. You can arrive with chaos or calm, with openness or defense. You can be the storm, or you can be the stillness within it. And each choice, each small act of awareness, ripples outward. When you whisper, I am responsible for the energy I bring, you reclaim that power. The power to create rather than react, to influence rather than absorb. It's easy to forget this in relationships where emotions collide and expectations run deep. We think love will thrive on words alone, but it also feeds on the energy beneath them. The tone, the attention, the presence. Sometimes what we say matters less than how we say it, or how we show up when we don't have the right words at all. Being responsible for your energy means asking yourself, not what do I want to say, but how do I want to make the other person feel in my presence? There is an emotional maturity in pausing before you respond, in choosing calm over control, empathy over ego. It's not about suppressing emotion. It's about channeling it with intention. You can express anger without aggression, truth without cruelty, disappointment without destruction. The difference lies in the energy behind your words. It's the difference between wanting to be right and wanting to be real. And this doesn't only apply to others. It applies to how you show up for yourself. When you wake up each morning, you set the tone for your day before you even speak. Your inner dialogue, the way you talk to yourself, shapes the energy you bring into your world. If you greet yourself with criticism, you'll carry defensiveness. But if you greet yourself with compassion, you'll carry peace. And peace, like tension, has its own gravity. It draws people in. It softens rooms. It steadies hearts. So before you step into the day, take a breath and check in. Ask yourself, what energy am I about to offer the world? Because whether you whisper kindness or frustration, both echo beyond you. And the way you choose to show up becomes part of the world you are creating. Whisper it gently as a promise to yourself and a gift to those around you, of I am responsible for the energy I bring. It's okay to start again. Such simple words, and yet they carry the weight of grace. Because starting again isn't something we're often taught to celebrate. We associate it with failure, with loss, with the idea that something went wrong. But what if starting again isn't evidence of failure at all? What if it's a sign of courage? To whisper these words to yourself is to remind your soul that life is not a straight path. It bends, it pauses, it unravels, and then, when you least expect it, it begins again. There's a quiet beauty in beginning. It's that moment when you admit to yourself that something needs to change. Not because you gave up, but because you've grown. It's when you realize that staying where you are no longer serves who you're becoming. And that realization, though it may come with tears or fear or uncertainty, is the first breath of renewal. The truth is, we begin again every single day, often without noticing. Every morning we rise, we are offered the gift of another chance. to think differently, to love differently, to choose differently. Starting again is an act of humility. It's looking at the ruins of what once was and saying, I can still build something new. It's forgiving yourself for not knowing better when you didn't, and allowing yourself to move forward now that you do. We tend to believe that the people who never fall are strong, but the real strength lies in those who fall and find the courage to rise, even when they're still aching. There's no shame in beginning again. The shame is only in believing that you can't. Sometimes, starting again means walking away from a relationship, a dream, a version of yourself that no longer fits. Other times, it means returning to a practice, a person, or a truth you once abandoned. Either way, it's an invitation to realign with what's honest, not with what's comfortable. Because comfort can keep us stagnant, but honesty moves us closer to authenticity. To start again is to trust in possibility. The possibility that you can still become more than what has happened to you, that your story isn't finished, that the ending you feared might just be a beginning in disguise. There's something sacred about that. It's the quiet rebellion against despair, the refusal to let the past decide the future. It's a whisper of resilience that says, even after all of this, I am still here. So when the weight of regret or disappointment starts to whisper louder than hope, pause and remember you have permission to begin again. You don't need to have everything figured out. You just need the willingness to take the next honest step. And sometimes, that step is enough to change everything. Whisper it softly, not as a plea, but as a promise. It's okay to start again. I am enough, even in my becoming. There is something deeply tender in those words, a softness that we often forget to give ourselves. Because for most of our lives, we're taught that enough is a destination. We chase it like something waiting at the end of achievement, perfection, or approval. We think that once we become successful enough, beautiful enough, healed enough, then we will finally feel at peace. But the truth is, that feeling never arrives from the outside. Enoughness isn't something you earn. It's something you remember. Whispering, I am enough, even in my becoming, is a quiet act of rebellion against every voice, internal or external, that told you otherwise. It's standing in the middle of your unfinished story and deciding that your worth is not on hold until you meet some imagined version of yourself. It's learning to love yourself not as a final product, but as a living process, fluid, evolving, imperfectly whole. So often we mistake growth for lack. We think, if I'm still learning, I must not be there yet. But what if growth itself is proof that you're alive, engaged, and awake? What if being in the process of becoming is not a sign of incompleteness, but of expansion? You are not supposed to have it all figured out. You are meant to keep unfolding, to discover, to question, to begin again. And through it all, you are enough, not when you arrive, not when you achieve, but right now, in the quiet space between what was and what will be. When you believe you are enough, even as you evolve, something in you relaxes. You stop performing your worth and start embodying it. You stop needing to prove your value to people who were never meant to define it. You begin to notice the simple, beautiful truths that were always there. The way your laughter changes the room, the way your presence steadies others, the way your love, even when imperfect, still matters deeply. There's a particular kind of peace that comes when you stop waiting to be worthy. You start showing up as you are, messy, brilliant, learning, trying. And you realize that this version of you deserves gentleness too. You learn to speak to yourself the way you would to someone you love, with patience, with curiosity, with grace. Because if you can only love yourself when you're perfect, you'll spend your whole life withholding love from the person who needs it most, the one you are right now. So as you move through the world, through the growing and the stumbling, through the moments of clarity and confusion, Let this truth echo softly inside you. You do not need to be finished to be worthy of peace. You do not need to be perfect to be lovable. You are enough, even in your becoming.